Hi, and welcome to Feminist Biscuits, the first episode. I'm actually here, amazingly enough, in my mother's house, which is wonderful. It's in France, hence the nice decor. And what I'm going to do right now is take you through how to cook my mistaken onion soup. So I'm just going to switch off now, and then having done so, show you how to chop up the onions, all of that sort of malarkey. So what I have here are the chief ingredients. First and foremost, the onions, about 1.5 kilos of onions. These are actually locally produced French onions, which is fantastic. Normally, I find with these ones the flavour is very intense. What it's probably going to mean is I'm going to get watery eyes whilst I make the onion soup, but that'll more than be made up for by the fact that the flavour is going to be very good. I have about 50 grams of butter here. This happens to be unsalted. I'm personally not of the opinion that it makes that much difference. Some people like it salted, some people like it unsalted. I have my stock granules here. It's a decent sort of stock. It's Knorr, which is good. And I'll be looking at the cheese later on. But the first thing I have to do is to cut the onions. And I'm going to show you how that happens a couple of times before switching off, because quite frankly, sitting through 1.5 kilos of onions being cut is not very interesting. Okay, first off, get yourself a decent cutting surface, and what is a sharp knife? You can see just there I've used that knife to cut the butter earlier. And what I normally do is I take the back and the front of the onion off, and then if I've got enough leverage, I will then peel the onion using any gaps that I've made in the skin. I mean, if push comes to shove, what you can do is you can just go like that. What it does is that gives you an extra cut, and the skin just comes off easier there. So if you're having difficulty, you might want to try that. Again, just here, just so it's easier for me to get the rest of the skin off. And there we go, so the skin's off, there you go. So we are rough chopping these onions, so it's not going to be a fine, particularly fine chop. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut them in half. I can already feel that in my eyes, so definitely that's there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice them to create a series of half rings. And I'm going to slice them not necessarily that thinly. As you can see, I'm keeping my fingers well back from the knife, and in fact right at the very end what I'll very often do is I'll grasp a piece of the onion like that, and I'll just take the final two cuts, grasping hold of the onion like that, and then what you can see is you've got lots of lovely little half rings, and these cook up really nicely and they make a really good mouthful when you're getting the onion soup done. Okay, so I'll just show you that again. Okay, and then as I'm getting towards the end, and there we go, and that way I get nice, evenly sort of shaped half onion rings right towards the very end. Okay, so now we're going to turn on the cooker to medium heat, which is roughly there if you're using gas. If you were using an electric hob with, shall we say, 1 to 5, it would be around about 3. And what we're going to do now is we're going to melt the butter. So we take our large saucepan and we add the butter in, and again what we're going to do is we're going to slowly melt that down. What we're not going to aim to do is to melt it really quickly, because if we do that the butter will burn and that will affect the long-term taste. So I'm just going to melt that down now, and you can see it's already starting to melt down. Okay, I think we can see now the butter has heated, and you can actually hear it's a nice temperature, but what hasn't happened is it's not burnt at any stage during the process. So what we're now going to do is we're going to add the onions. Oh yeah. And you can hear the sound they make when they go into the pan. The heat's pretty much bang on. And then we're going to be frying ourselves up some decent onions here. Okay, what I like to do now is give them a good stir. What I'm really looking to do here is to ensure that all the onions at least are covered in a bit of butter. I'm also breaking up the onions just out of their rings so they just loosen up. That's going to happen anyway, but you need to give it a bit of a hand along the process. Just make certain they'll cook more evenly. Okay, so I've turned the heat up a little bit just to help in that initial process. And I'm going to keep on cooking these and stirring these for about the next 5 minutes. Okay, these have been cooking now for about 5 minutes and I've been stirring them during the time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. So if I just take that off, you can see I've turned that down quite a bit. And I'm going to put a lid on these and I'm going to reduce down these onions so I get really concentrated flavour. I'm going to caramelise them a bit. Okay, so do is just put that on, and I normally leave a little bit of a gap, as you can see. We've got some smoke coming out of that. Well, it's not smoke, it's steam. And what that's going to be is that's the water coming off it. Obviously, as the water comes off the onions, the flavours inside get more and more concentrated, and that's going to give us a really nice soup. Okay, so it's been about half an hour now, and as we look at the onions, you can see that we've reduced down the bulk of them quite a lot. They've also turned this lovely golden colour, sort of golden brown colour. You can see certain bits of them are maybe slightly more cooked than others, but generally speaking they're pretty evenly cooked there. The bulk being reduced is down to all the water having boiled off, plus also they've softened a lot, so that's going to blend really nicely with our stock. So what we do now is we add our stock. So we've added our stock there to the onions, and what I'm going to do now is I am going to turn the heat up to the point where it boils. I've now brought the soup to a boil, and it's been at that boil for about a minute. So what I'm going to do is turn down the heat, and what I really want to do is, you can see it at the moment, it's pretty much at a simmer, so just off the boil. And I'm going to cover that up and I'm going to cook that for about half an hour. And really what I'm looking to do there, and the reason I don't want it too hot, is I'm waiting for the flavours to blend together. Because the whole thing with soups and stews is very much the time that the ingredients all spend together. And it's extremely good actually if you can cook the soup, shall we say, 4 hours in advance, or maybe even a whole day. And then if you leave it overnight, and I'd put it in the fridge if I was going to leave it overnight, what you'll find is the next day all the flavours will have blended together a lot more, and you'll get a much better tasting soup. It'll still be good on the day you make it, but not quite as good as the second day. Anyway, so I'll do that, and I will show you how to prepare the extras. Okay, so I'm very quickly going to take you through how to make your bread to go in your onion soup. Okay, I'm very lucky, as I said, because I'm here in France at the moment, but I couldn't recommend to you enough that having gone through the trouble of making this authentic onion soup, don't skimp on the bread. Get yourself something nice and crusty like a cottage loaf, etc. All of these sorts of things are excellent. A French baguette, if you can get it. I actually cook my own French bread at home, and then the idea here really is to create a very crisp sort of bread slice that you can then put cheese on. I'm going to rub mine in garlic as well, and that then going to add to the flavour and sort of bulk out the soup as well. So I think you can just see here on that, I'm cutting these really quite thin. if I wanted to put a lot of bread in, I'd still cut thin, but I just add a lot of different slices. And what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to toast them, and then I'm going to rub them with garlic. Okay, so I've toasted the bread, and if I can just show that to you there, what you can see is that the perforated surface of the bread basically forms almost like a grater there. So I take a garlic clove, and then I just rub it against that. And what will happen is that little bits of garlic will rub off onto the bread, and you can see by just looking at that the garlic's become almost slightly grated there. And what that's going to do is when the hot onion soup hits that, it's going to infuse the onion soup with just a hint of garlic, which is going to be lovely. Okay, so now what we have here is 2 pieces of the toasted bread, which have had the garlic rubbed on them. I have put some Emmental over the top. As I think I said in the recipe, you can actually also use something like Gruyere, or in fact Jarlsberg, amazingly, which is a Scandinavian cheese, because it's very stringy, and it goes all lovely and chewy and stringy when it gets hot. You now take very hot onion soup. It's been bubbling away, and I have to confess I had a bowl earlier just to double check that it was okay, and it was really very nice. And you can see that despite the amount of stock that went in, the amount of onions that went in fact the soup's really quite thick. It's got quite a lot of onions in it, and that's because, as I think I said, the onions reduce down quite a lot but then get bulked up by the stock. So I've now left the 2 to 3 centimetres of gap there. Here's the bit that basically led to the title of it being Mistaken Onion Soup, which is I added the onion soup right at the very end. This is very, very cold. It's just come out of the fridge, and you can see it's almost floating slightly on the top. And what that does is basically you get all of the wine goodness off the back of that. And generally speaking, I'll put a little bit of pepper on top of that. And that's now ready to be whisked away either by yourself or your guest to eat, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I do. Thanks for listening.